The Oversight Committee exists to secure two fundamental principles. First, Americans have a right to know that the money Washington takes from them is well spent. And second, Americans deserve an efficient, effective government that works for them. Our duty on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee is to protect these rights. Our solemn responsibility is to hold government accountable to taxpayers, because taxpayers have a right to know what they get from their government. It's our job to work tirelessly in partnership with citizen watchdogs to deliver the facts to the American people and bring genuine reform to the federal bureaucracy. This is our mission. Today, we are dealing with exactly that kind of a situation. The IG's report, issued yesterday, began with watchdogs and whistleblowers making us aware of a fatally flawed operation known as Fast and Furious.
It is the scandal that no matter how many times the Obama administration seeks to bury it, discount it, call it a partisan attack, Fast and Furious remains that mosquito bite that just won't go away. And a federal judge just last week sent another stinger to the Justice Department that leaves us to once again examine why this won't disappear and why it needs continued attention. Welcome into MidPoint. Let's talk about those whistleblowers. President of Judicial Watch and author of the New York Times bestseller, The Corruption Chronicles, Tom Fitton, joins us on MidPoint. Tom, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Tom, you are the mosquito bite here to the Obama administration once again, because you're the guys out there who are making it all happen. Tell us about this decision last week and why it is so important.
Well, your viewers and listeners may recall that a few years ago, Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress in a historic event because he refused to turn over to the House documents about Fast and Furious, specifically documents about why the Department of Justice and the Obama administration lied to the House about Fast and Furious. So it's not even necessarily about the scandal generally, it's about lying about it. And Holder refused to turn it over. He went into contempt. The president made the extraordinary move of claiming executive privilege over these documents, which practically speaking prevented Holder from being prosecuted for this contempt. And the House has been battling for these documents ever since, for years, in federal court. Well, Judicial Watch, which uses the Freedom of Information Act, had the bright idea to say, well, we'll use the Freedom of Information Act and give us the documents that you're not disclosing to Congress, these executive privilege documents. Because we know that, at least under the Freedom of Information Act, when we sued in court, we could get a listing of documents and find out what people are fighting about. Congress hadn't been even able to get that. Well, the Department of Justice came in and stayed our case for 2 years while the big boys fought it out, the House and the Department of Justice. Obviously, that wasn't going anywhere. Finally, the court, earlier this month, Judge Bates said, Judicial Watch's FOIA lawsuit, the public has a right to know, can proceed. We're not going to delay this case forever. So as of October 1st, we're supposed to get at least a list of the documents they're supposedly withholding from disclosure, which is frankly what Congress had tried to hold Holder in contempt for and been fighting for 2 years. So once again, we beat Congress to the punch here. And frankly speaking, we probably could get documents even before Congress does at this point, because once the court process begins, as you know, with Benghazi and the IRS and other things that Judicial Watch has been involved in terms of the Freedom of Information Act, we just have a better way of getting documents than Congress does.
Well, here it's called a Vaughn Index. I want to make sure that everybody knows, so when they hear this before, this is exactly what it's called that you're getting, the detailed listing of all documents. Actually, Tom, what are you trying and what are you hoping to find here?
Well, we're trying to find out about the cover-up. I mean, the allegation is that the Department of Justice sent a letter to Congress saying, oh, all that material you heard about Fast and Furious, no worries. Well, they quickly found out that there were indeed worries. Obviously, in my view, they knew when they sent Congress that they were lying. But even assuming they knew otherwise, or even assuming that they sent that letter innocently, they shortly found out that Fast and Furious was indeed what critics had suggested. And they didn't tell Congress otherwise. And they continued to leave this misimpression and arguably lies with Congress for months. So this Vaughn Index may be the roadmap to who was responsible for those lies and where to ask questions next.
I would imagine, though, that you, like everybody else who's a watchdog, investigative personnel, journalist, whatever, knows that there's a really good chance that what you're looking for just doesn't exist anymore, because isn't it funny how things have a habit of just wandering their way into the ethereal mist somewhere and vanishing?
Well, there are a lot of bad things about the government. One of the good things is they tend to keep documents around. Ask Richard Nixon.
I'll go with that then. At least it was a tape, and certainly not just the documents, but the tapes themselves. Now, there was supposed to be a follow-up here. The weapons were sold to the Mexican gangs. That's part of what we all talked about here, with the intention of finding out where they ended up. Did anybody actually follow up? Is there any idea where any of these weapons wound up, or what kind of percentage do we have here?
Well, that's an interesting question. We know the Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was murdered by them. Allegations 300 Mexicans were killed by them. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, said we can expect crimes from these guns to continue for years. That's an interesting question worth pursuing with this administration. Are these Fast and Furious guns showing up elsewhere?
With regard to these guns and showing up elsewhere, what is the sense that you get through all of this time and all of the different documents that you've looked at and all of the different investigations that Judicial Watch has done, the president's opinion to all this? What has come through to you and spoken to your group about Barack Obama and his consideration and his thought about what has happened here?
Well, he's the one claiming executive privilege. And to me, this seems to me that maybe the White House had some involvement here, or there's a White House interest they're protecting. This president promised to be the most transparent administration in history, and his fighting Congress tooth and nail on this issue, his trying to delay Judicial Watch from getting basic information in a typical regular Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, it all shows he has something to hide. He believes he's above the law. His administration believes he's above the law. And Fast and Furious, we were laughing about Richard Nixon, or maybe I wasn't laughing about Richard Nixon, but you make the comparison. Watergate didn't have body bags. There are hundreds of them with Fast and Furious. So this is an important scandal that is going to continue to be an issue for this administration if there's any justice in this town.
Is it an important scandal, though, as you put it, that the American people are going to get some sort of resolution on before maybe the next decade? Honestly, when you think about people, and I'm sure you know this, we'll hear the words Fast and Furious. Very few people now think about this gun running here and the gun walking here. They're thinking more about movies than anything else. The American public has a very short attention span. So is it possible that this is just something that is going to be dragged out for another decade or more?
Well, that may be the case, but you can see we're talking about Fast and Furious again as a result of the administration's stonewalling. So the silver lining of the stonewalling is, however objectionable and lawless it is, that when we break through the stone walls, the issue pops up again in unexpected ways years after the fact. We've got a process. The process is working. We did something Congress wasn't able to do. There is a vehicle. There is a roadway. There is a way for accountability, and Judicial Watch is offering that through the Freedom of Information Act. And the system in some ways is still working, not the way we want. But my gosh, if we weren't doing this, we'd be in the dark completely, as you point out, for many, many years. We've cut away. I tell you, if we had waited for Congress to resolve this with the administration on these documents, we'd be talking about them in a Chelsea Clinton administration.
Do you get the feeling that many people, many lawmakers simply have lost interest in this and it's just not important anymore?
Oh, I think it's important to a lot of lawmakers, and it's out of sight, out of mind, and I'm sure you've gotten this with your listeners and viewers and your readers. You talk about Fast and Furious, and you remind people of what went on. It doesn't take much to make them get upset about this again, and this is an issue that is not going to go away. And we, Judicial Watch, we're committed to making sure it doesn't. And I think as a result of our work, political leaders and hopefully some prosecutors pay more attention to it as well. That's the way things work if things are working right, and things are beginning to work right in this case.
30 seconds left. What happens next in getting your list?
Our list, it comes October 1st. This technical term, the Vaughn Index, which is essentially a list of the documents with enough information that we can use to figure out whether the documents are being withheld properly, that could be a goldmine for investigators, obviously for us. But as the government compiles this list, they may decide legally they can't withhold these documents from Judicial Watch. Who knows that we may be getting documents on top of just a list of documents they're not giving us. It's going to be something that we are looking forward to getting the process going finally, because I think we're going to get even more accountability than we know.
Tom, it's a reason why we're going to stay in touch with you and the guys at Judicial Watch. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, guys.
All right, later on this hour, On Point brings you a new look at what we've talked about here today. And next up, flashback to America's Forum and the Steve Malzberg Show. It's only right here on MidPoint.